There's a family you've never heard of that built an empire more powerful than many modern tech giants, and they did it by becoming the world's biggest drug dealers. Before Google dominated information, before Amazon controlled global commerce, the Sassoon family built a corporate dynasty that stretched from the ports of India to the financial heart of London. They controlled 70% of the world's most valuable traded commodity. They financed wars, built entire city districts, and became friends with kings and prime ministers. And when it was over, when the damage was done and their fortune was secured, they didn't face justice or ruin. They were knighted by the British crown and welcomed into the highest circles of power. This is the story of the Sassoons, the refugee family that built a global opium empire, and how the very thing that made them powerful was what their children were desperate to destroy. This is the lore of money. We explore how money shapes history, power, and society. Subscribe for more. Before we tell the Sassoon story, you need to understand the world they walked into. The early 19th century was a world of collapsing old empires and one rapidly expanding new one. In the East, the Ottoman Empire was decaying, its regional governors growing corrupt and unpredictable, making life dangerous for minorities who had thrived there for centuries. But on the oceans, the British Empire was building the first truly globalized economy, enforced by the world's most powerful navy. For a merchant with ambition, this new world offered limitless opportunity, but only if you could navigate its treacherous currents. The system ran on connections, on trust, and on information that traveled no faster than a sailing ship. This is the context that matters. Now let's see what a family of refugees did with it. The story of the Sassoon Empire doesn't begin in poverty, but in prestige. For generations, the Sassoon family were pillars of Baghdadi society, serving as the chief treasurers to the pashas who governed the region for the Ottoman Empire. They were not just bankers, but also leaders of Baghdad's ancient and prosperous Jewish community. The family patriarch, Sheikh Sassoon ben Saleh, was a man of immense wealth and influence, commanding deep-rooted commercial networks that stretched across the Middle East. They were already a dynasty, possessing a tradition of leadership and financial acumen that had been honed over centuries. Their roots in Mesopotamia were ancient, so their eventual departure wasn't a simple migration for economic opportunity, but a desperate flight from annihilation. That stable world shattered in the 1820s under the rule of a corrupt and erratic governor named Dawood Pasha. His reign brought a wave of persecution targeting the Jewish community, and the Sassoons, as the most prominent Jewish family, were his primary target. Their wealth, their status, and their very lives were under threat. Faced with this impossible situation, Sheikh Sassoon's son, David, made the decision to escape. Around 1828, he fled Baghdad, first making his way to Persia. After his father died, David gathered his own family and set sail for the one place that offered both safety and opportunity, the British-controlled port of Bombay. When David Sassoon arrived in 1832, Bombay was a chaotic, burgeoning colonial city, a gateway to the vast markets of Asia. He established his firm, David Sassoon and Company, from a small office on Tamarind Street. His first moves were clever but conventional, acting as a middleman connecting British textile mills with merchants in the Persian Gulf, a trade he understood intimately from his time in Baghdad. But his genius was in what he did next. Instead of just taking a commission, he poured his profits into buying up critical infrastructure, specifically harbor properties and docks. This was a strategic masterstroke. It gave him partial control over the flow of goods in and out of the city, allowing him to finance other traders' ventures and secure the best access to commodities. However, the true foundation of his empire, his secret weapon, was his staffing policy. David Sassoon systematically brought trusted members of the Baghdadi Jewish community to Bombay to work for him. This wasn't just about helping his own people, it was the creation of a nearly perfect operational network. In an age of slow communication and non-existent international contract law, trust was the single most valuable asset a business could have. The Sassoon network was a closed, high-trust ecosystem, bound by kinship, a shared culture, and a common language. Business deals worth fortunes were often sealed without written contracts, something unimaginable for European firms. The family's name and reputation, backed by shared values, was the only guarantee needed. Furthermore, all internal communications, from shipping manifests to secret price negotiations, were conducted in the Baghdadi Jewish dialect, but written in Hebrew script. To any outsider, these documents were completely indecipherable. This effectively created a secure, coded channel for all sensitive commercial information, giving the Sassoons a massive advantage in speed and security. Their culture was their code. This unique network allowed them to coordinate a global operation with a unity and efficiency that their competitors simply could not replicate. While David Sassoon's initial businesses were profitable, the colossal fortune that made his family legendary was built on a single notorious commodity: opium. By turning his attention from the Middle East to the vast closed-off market of Qing China, he transformed his company into a global juggernaut. The geopolitical winds blew decisively in his favor when Britain defeated China in the First Opium War. The 1842 Treaty of Nanking forcibly opened 5 Chinese ports to foreign trade and, most importantly, legalized the import of Indian-grown opium. The British Empire actively encouraged this trade to reverse its massive trade deficit caused by its insatiable demand for Chinese tea. The Sassoons didn't just participate in this newly legalized drug trade, they engineered its domination. Their strategy was brilliant and ruthless. They completely bypassed the traditional supply chain. Instead of buying from middlemen, they went directly to Indian producers, often buying entire opium crops before they were even harvested. This secured their supply and allowed them to drastically undercut the prices of their established British rivals, like Jardine Matheson. They built their own fleet of fast ships, known as opium clippers, to ensure their product reached China quickly and reliably. The result was a near monopoly on the world's most lucrative drug trade. By the 1870s, David Sassoon and Company was estimated to control around 70% of all opium flowing from India to China. This formed the heart of an incredibly profitable, triangular trade. They shipped Indian opium and cotton to China, traded it for Chinese silver, tea, and silk, and then shipped those goods to Britain, making enormous profits at every leg of the journey. A second global event supercharged their growth: the American Civil War. When the Union blockade cut off the supply of American cotton to the world's textile mills in England, it created a massive, sudden demand for Indian cotton. The Sassoons, already masters of Indian commodity trading, were perfectly positioned to exploit this crisis. They diversified aggressively, becoming a major force in the global cotton industry. But they didn't just trade the raw material. They pursued a strategy of vertical integration. They bought their own steamships to control transportation. They started their own maritime insurance companies to protect their cargo. And most significantly, they moved into finance. In 1865, the Sassoons were part of the founding consortium of the Hong Kong and Shanghai Banking Corporation, better known today as HSBC. This bank was created specifically to finance the exploding trade between Europe and Asia. By helping create the very institutions that finance their own operations, they cemented their position at the absolute center of Asian commerce. David Sassoon structured his empire like a kingdom. He had 8 sons, and he dispatched them like viceroys to establish and manage powerful branches of the firm in the key commercial hubs of the world. He opened an office in Hong Kong, then Shanghai and Canton, as soon as the Opium War made them accessible. Later, the network expanded to Japan and back to the financial centers of London and Manchester. This was arguably the first modern multinational corporation headquartered in Asia. The model was always the same. A son of the patriarch ran each office. The workforce was composed of loyal Baghdadi Jews, and the secret code of their unique dialect kept their communication secure. The rise of this empire was inseparable from the rise of the British Empire. The Sassoons were not colonists. They were private merchants who became naturalized British subjects. Their entire enterprise depended on the military and political framework Britain provided. The Royal Navy protected their ships from pirates. British wars opened markets that were previously closed, and British law in India provided a stable base of operations. The family shrewdly aligned their interests with the empire, earning citizenship, titles, and incredible political access in return. Their private company acted as a powerful non-state extension of British economic power in Asia. It was a perfect symbiosis. The Sassoons built a dynastic fortune by helping to finance and expand the British imperial project. When the patriarch David Sassoon died in 1864, leadership passed to his eldest son, Abdullah, who immediately anglicized his name to Albert. Sir Albert Sassoon was a transitional figure. He inherited his father's sharp business mind, but his focus shifted from aggressive trading to large-scale industrial development that would permanently change the face of Bombay. In 1875, he financed and built the Sassoon Docks, the first wet docks on the entire western coast of India. This massive project revolutionized the city's port, enabling it to handle the booming global trade. He also established a series of modern cotton mills, transforming Bombay from a simple trading post into a major industrial manufacturing hub that employed thousands. Albert also worked tirelessly to cement the family's place in the British establishment. He became a key advisor to the colonial government and a philanthropist on a grand scale. For his contributions and his loyalty, he was showered with honors, knighted by Queen Victoria, and became a personal friend of the Prince of Wales. He embodied the family's successful integration into the highest levels of imperial society. But this smooth succession was shattered by a bitter family war. David's second son, Elias, was a brilliant merchant who had personally built the family's incredibly profitable China trade from the ground up. He had spent years in Shanghai and Hong Kong, creating the opium and textile business that generated a huge portion of the family's wealth. He deeply resented his father's decision to grant ultimate authority to his older brother, Albert. After 3 years of acrimonious disputes, Elias broke away in 1867 and established his own competing company, Sassoon and Company. This was a schism that created two rival Sassoon empires, with offices in the same cities fighting for the same markets. By many accounts, Elias's new firm was more aggressive and more innovative, doubling down on the Far East while Albert's firm focused more on India and London. While born of family conflict, this split had the unintended effect of hedging the family's fortune. Albert's branch became deeply integrated with the British establishment in London, while Elias's branch became the undisputed kings of Shanghai real estate, literally building the city's famous skyline. Decades later, when one branch faced a catastrophe, the other provided a safety net. In a remarkable chapter, leadership of the original firm's vast Indian operations fell to a woman. Flora Sassoon was the wife of David's seventh son. She was a formidable intellectual, a renowned religious scholar, and possessed a sharp business mind. When her husband died in 1894, Flora refused to let control of the business pass to a less capable male relative. She took over herself, and for 8 years she successfully managed the massive operations of David Sassoon and Company in India. She professionalized its management and began the crucial process of diversifying away from the increasingly controversial opium trade. Her tenure was a success, but she was eventually pushed out by her male relatives, a move that highlighted the deeply patriarchal limits of the era, even for a woman of her proven talent. The third and fourth generations of the Sassoon dynasty embarked on a new ambitious project: the complete transformation from Baghdadi merchants into English aristocrats. The family's center of gravity shifted decisively from Bombay to London. They acquired all the trappings of the English upper class: magnificent mansions in London's most exclusive neighborhoods and sprawling country estates that became famous for their opulent parties. Their guest lists included Winston Churchill, Charlie Chaplin, and the future King of England. They were no longer just rich, they were at the center of British society. They pursued assimilation on every front. They secured seats in Parliament. They forged strategic marriages, most famously when Sir Edward Sassoon married into the Rothschild family, merging the two great Jewish banking dynasties. And they underwent a complete cultural metamorphosis. They adopted English dress, English pursuits like fox hunting, and English attitudes. The relentless hands-on work ethic that had built the empire was now seen as common, something beneath their new station as gentlemen. Sir Philip Sassoon is the perfect example of this transformation. A man of immense taste and charm, he was a prominent politician and one of the most celebrated society hosts of his time. His life was a whirlwind of politics, art, and parties. But while he held the title of chairman of David Sassoon and Company, his involvement in the business was purely symbolic. Under his detached leadership, the firm that had once dominated Asian trade slowly withered away. The final break came with the poet Siegfried Sassoon, a great-grandson of David. Growing up in the English countryside, he developed an open disdain for his family's business, speaking with contempt of their dirty trading. The journey from merchant to artist was complete, but it signified a total alienation from the source of the family's power. This successful social assimilation came at a direct and fatal cost to the business. The decline was a direct result of losing the specific cultural capital that had created their wealth in the first place. The Sassoons' original competitive advantage was their diasporic network, a high-trust system built on a shared Baghdadi identity and a unique dialect that served as a business code. The multi-generational project of assimilating into the British aristocracy required the systematic dismantling of this very advantage. By shedding their unique identity, they eroded the cohesion and informational advantages of their network. They traded their unique commercial identity for a generic social one. They became just another wealthy British family, but one that had allowed the commercial engine that had propelled them to the top to stall and decay. The internal decay of the Sassoon Empire collided with seismic external shocks. The generations who inherited the fortune were not hungry. They preferred to enjoy the wealth rather than build it. This complacency meant they failed to adapt. The first major blow was the end of the legal opium trade. A 1907 agreement between Britain and China phased out the trade over the next decade, eliminating the primary engine of the family's profit. They were too slow and too disconnected from the business to pivot to new industries. The final blows were political. The rise of Indian nationalism, culminating in independence in 1947, eroded their base of power. But the most devastating event was the communist victory in China in 1949. The new government nationalized all foreign assets overnight. The vast Shanghai real estate empire, built by the E.D. Sassoon branch, was wiped out in a single stroke. Sir Victor Sassoon, who had centralized his operations in Shanghai, had failed to see the geopolitical tsunami that was coming, and he lost almost everything. The well-known saying that family fortunes are lost by the third generation proved true for the Sassoons. But the reason was profound. The decline wasn't just about lazy heirs. It was the logical business outcome of a century-long cultural choice. They had traded a unique and powerful commercial identity for social acceptance, and in doing so, they had given away the very secret to their success. The history of the Sassoon dynasty is like a diamond. It starts at a single point with David Sassoon, widens out rapidly to a global empire of immense wealth, and then tapers disastrously to nothing. Within a century of its founding, the great enterprise had effectively vanished, its branches sold off or nationalized, its name fading from the world of international finance. But while the business is gone, its physical legacy is permanently etched into the landscapes of Asia's greatest cities. The family's philanthropy built institutions that still stand today. In Mumbai, the Sassoon docks remain a vital part of the harbor. The David Sassoon Library is a landmark of public learning, and the beautiful synagogues they built are centers of community life. In Shanghai, the iconic Sassoon House still stands on the Bund, now part of a luxury hotel, a lasting monument to the era when the Sassoons were the uncrowned kings of the city. The lesson of the Sassoons isn't just about their rise, it's about their fall. It's a story of how a refugee family leveraged their unique cultural identity to achieve unimaginable wealth, building an empire on the back of a destructive drug trade, all within the framework of British imperialism. Above all, their saga reveals the profound tension between maintaining what makes you unique and the seductive allure of assimilation. The very things that gave them their competitive edge, their tight-knit community, their secret business language, their identity as outsiders, were the exact things their descendants chose to erase in their pursuit of acceptance. The names change, the methods evolve, but the core mechanism stays the same. The history of the Sassoons is a timeless cautionary tale about the complex relationship between commerce, culture, and power. If this opened your eyes to how empires are really built and lost, subscribe, because the patterns that shaped history are still running today, and I'll show you where to look.